Hello and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. My name is Andrew Claudio, aka GMAC, and it's time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time on Friday night at MSG against the 4th seed Orlando Magic, a team that has beaten the Knicks 3 different times. Granted, these 3 games had some special circumstances. The first one was the last game of the RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley era. The second one didn't have Jalen Brunson, and I'm pretty sure nobody played in the last one. But it's not to take anything away from the Magic, who have vaulted their way into the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, so making this a pretty pivotal game if the Knicks have any ideas of getting back up to 4th as well. Hopefully getting Jalen Brunson back, and as we got some news the other day, Anunoby just around the corner as he has been cleared for contact and is playing in 5-on-5 matchups. So hopefully he returns soon, while he won't play in this game on Friday. And hopefully the Knicks and Magic give us a good game to watch. And joining me to break this game down for the final time from the Sixth Man Show, the missing link from said Sixth Man Show, the very popular Sixth Man Show that got mentioned on the Bally Sports, I believe it's Bally Sports South Florida or just Bally Sports Florida broadcast the other night. Mr. Luke Sylvia. Luke, welcome back to the Knicks Film School podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. It's only right. I believe I was the first one from our trio to be on the show last season. And then now I know you've already had Jonathan, you've had Kevin, you've had Dante from Bally Sports Florida, and now getting to round out the year. Do you, after doing this many previews with this many teams, Andrew, is there any like fatigue of like, I got to talk about the Magic again, or is the season ever changing enough that you're like, I'm still somewhat excited to preview a matchup with this, a different member of a Magic representation for the 4th time?
So the funny thing about that question is, like, I definitely felt that with, like, if they've played the Pistons again, because like, oh, they're bad still, or the Hornets again, oh, they're bad still, like the Wizards. I repeat, they're bad still. The Magic, I think the funny part about the 4 specific times, as I mentioned in the intro, is that the Knicks have been at a different point in their season every time they've played the Magic. And I believe the Magic have also been at a different point in their season. The first time it was like, all right, how real this is this is a nice story, and they've come back down to earth. The second time it was much more of a, like, what are expectations for the rest of the year? The next time it was the day after you guys retired Shaq's number, so you're riding high off of the emotions of that night. And that leads to my first question, Luke, that I've compared the Magic this year to the Knicks team from 2 years ago that ended up being a 4 seed and a surprise to a lot of people. And like, the play styles are very similar with that. You have a starting 5 that is trying to play even. And like, if the Paolo to Julius comps are I think comparable, and then you have a bench unit that just blitzes teams and builds your leads. And then, they ended up as a 4 seed. And I believe the final step of that prophecy is that the Magic end up a 4th seed, which they currently sit at now. How are the vibes right now in Orlando? That this team is 7-1 since the All-Star break. They have the 3rd easiest schedule remaining. I've certainly kept an eye on it and started to tell people, like, I wouldn't be shocked if Miami, Orlando was the 4-5 solely based on strength of schedule. So just like, how are you feeling about where your team is through 60 plus games?
Honestly, obviously, like the Magic at this point have surpassed last year's win total already with 34 wins last year. Now we're at 36, 37 at this point, 37 now. So the vibes could be better. They could not be better. You couldn't have written it up better. I hate injuries. I wish they weren't a part of the game as a Magic fan who was decimated by injuries last year. Otherwise maybe would have been a 40 plus win team last year is how we were trending. So as much as I hate injuries, the Magic have benefited from injuries, this latter part of the All-Star break, right? Like we understand that, but at the same time, I have to be honest, we're done empathizing, and we can empathize. We're not really going to sympathize with teams that are just telling us how injured they are. We know, we get it. It derailed our last season. Now, what I have told people too is like, because I have a couple good friends who are Knicks fans, and we have a group chat together, and a Knicks Magic playoff matchup would maybe end friendships. But what I have said to my 6-man show friends is I can't imagine making the trades you guys made and then getting just decimated by injuries, because we had it happen last year, but we didn't have the hopes of being a really at this point. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like after the trade you guys made, no reason you guys couldn't contend for the Eastern Conference. So, or to get to make an appearance.
The conference finals, I think, was the highest I ever got. Boston.
Yeah.
Look, I know Boston had this collapse the other night against Cleveland. The larger sample size of Boston is them being unbeatable in a lot of stretches. I know Milwaukee's best lineups, like a couple of our guys, specifically our guy XJ, has made the point that their 4 most used lineups are just like incredible. So like even better, like they have one lineup, their starting 5, Milwaukee's, has a higher net rating than the Boston starting 5. That's just been blitzing teams and building 50-point wins against the 3 different teams this year. So I think I never got higher than like this team could make the conference finals and give Boston a run for their money. I think where I'm at now is Boston took a step up. The Knicks have just been playing like this holding game, this waiting game, this holding pattern for the last 2 months while they've been injured, that like I'll settle for just like give me a healthy roster in the 6th seed right now, and I'll like play the chips as they lie, or play the ball as it lies and just see like how it goes. And so I think that's where I'm at, which is like not to say that like if the Knicks can get the 4 seed, I won't be like I'm not saying don't go get the 4 seed. I look at the schedule remaining and I look at where the Knicks have been. They're 7-9 without Julius Randle and OG Anunoby, and really with a half of Isaiah Hartenstein. But I think that's where the question then goes back to you at the Magic. We're seeing what's happened to the Knicks, seeing what's happened to the Sixers. I mean, I don't want to fully put the Cavs as in a different tier because of what they're facing with the Mitchell injury, and Mobley missed the game with an ankle, and Darius Garland got hurt. I'm not sure how severe those last 2 injuries are, but like clearly the Donovan Mitchell injury is significant. And you look at the Magic and their injury situation is not as dire, and I can't stress this enough. Their schedule is really favorable for them to make a legitimate like run the rest of the season to maybe even get up to 3. So like, what are your expectations for the rest of the year? Is it solely based on where they place in the standings? Do you want to see this team make a run at the conference finals? Do you think that's like the bar that should be set? Like what does a disappointing season look like?
Disappointing would be play in, get knocked out of the play in. That's really where disappointment would start, is if you make the play in at this point, when that just, I understand the race is close, but given the context, you should be able to be the 6 seed or better. There's no reason. You haven't had injuries. You made it through your toughest part of the schedule, which maybe to this team's advantage was the beginning of the year, being battle tested at the beginning, going right on the road on game 2. So going out west, having that road trip, that you got through that. December through January was really rough. You stayed afloat. And then now you're at the point where you haven't lost back-to-back games since the end of January. So you feel good about it. You're 13-3 in your last 6. Only tied better is the Boston Celtics in that stretch. Yes, has to do with the favorable schedule, but also this team is young, yet they're beating the teams they should beat, which says a lot for a young team. They're maturing right in front of our eyes. Their defense is awesome. So for me, I would hope that you don't fall below that 6 seed at that point. And then if you got knocked out in the play-in, I don't know what I would do. It would be brutal.
They get knocked out in the first round. Is that a disappointing season?
No. Okay. I have no expectation for this team to make it past the first round, to be honest with you. They are young. They have a shooting problem. That's, you look at the stats one time, this team has a shooting problem. And so you've got to address that this offseason. But at the same time, you have guys like Gary Harris finally stepping up after not being super great to start the season. So you've got guys that are kind of showing up as shooters, but I don't expect it to happen. They've got a great defense, but the offense, it just becomes so stagnant at times. I don't anticipate much, honestly, when it comes to the postseason. I just want the experience. And Jonathan and I have talked about this on the podcast. We want all of the flaws to get exposed in the playoffs. You want everything because you want them to know exactly going into the offseason, here's what we need. And, and hopefully that comes to fruition, that they address all the needs.
Well, speaking of those flaws, I know throughout a long season, answers to some questions you had before the season are given. And, maybe some new questions arise as the season maybe takes a different shape. So now that you are the 4th seed, and again, 37 and 26 with a little more than a month ago, what other questions do you need answers to from this team? Or maybe what's the biggest question that you need an answer to about this team that you hope you don't find out in an exposing playoff loss,
Yeah, so I think kind of a twist on that question could be, something I need answered this season is, come playoff time, who's going to be the riser? Who's going to be your guy? I have a hunch it's going to be Jalen Suggs. It just seems like big moments happen, and they're all usually because of him down the stretch, whether it's the defensive play, whether it's hitting a clutch 3-pointer, getting to the rim. Jalen Suggs is able to do it all, and I think that will be the answer to that question. But being as we haven't seen this team in a playoff setting, you just have no idea who's going to fold, who's going to step up. Is everybody going to step up? I doubt it, but that would be awesome. So I also think the question that's got to be answered, or going to be answered this season, is going into the playoffs, how are you going to continue shooting the way you've been shooting? If you're not, then this playoff round's going to get ugly. But if you continue to do what you're doing, where right now they're actually shooting a lower volume, and they were already shooting one of the lowest volumes in the league, but their shooting has improved a ton. Like I said, in large part due to guys like Gary Harris stepping up and shooting 60% like his last 8 games on 3.5 attempts. He's shooting better from the 3-point line than the field goal percentage is for him. And the Magic are shooting 39% in their last 15, which is leaps and bounds better.
So I jumped to the post All-Star break. So you have the last 15, which is, 39 is a good percent. They are last in 3-point attempts since the All-Star break, which means they're, like you said, the volume is low, but in 3-point percentage, they are 6th. So to your point, and this is why I'm curious how the Knicks play this on Friday night. Do the Knicks go full drop and just try to take away the paint and say, like, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to take 43s, so 35 threes tonight. You're only averaging 28 a game. You're not even averaging 30. So you're going to have to go out of your comfort zone, which I think that's how they tried to play the game on Martin Luther King MLK Day at the Garden. And I honestly thought for the most part, the Knicks were successful. They were up late, and then just the Knicks ran out of, a lot went wrong for the Knicks. No Jalen Brunson. Randall had a bad game. DiVincenzo missed some free throws, and the Magic went on a run at the end of the game. This injuries aside, injuries happen. This is a gigantic game for both of our teams because separated by a half a game. And I don't know where the Magic would rank in how scared am I of them rankings, but I know that series, I trust their defense. That's going to be sustainable come postseason. If you had to rank the teams that you're afraid of, and not in ranking the power rankings of the East, I think we're all afraid of Boston in some way. Yeah. But first round matchup that you don't want the most, what would your top 3 be?
I don't want Boston. That's kind of a foregone conclusion at that point. Okay. We all know that. I genuinely don't want the Knicks.
Wow. Even though you're 3-0 against them this year?
Like you said, they're all different scenarios. Okay. And in a grinded out series, I think the Knicks can grind it out with the best of them. And as much as I would love to have we're going to have a defensive edge in most series that we play, but the Knicks aren't really slouches when it comes to that, especially when fully healthy. Mitch, which I don't know the latest on him, do we think
Mitch Robinson's not playing until he's a month away, if anything?
Right. So, but yeah, not necessarily in light of tomorrow, but postseason.
Oh, you're saying like in the postseason? That's a maybe. Yeah. That is a maybe.
Yeah, that's what I thought that was where that was at. So the Knicks, it has a lot to do with the fact that you guys take over Kia, which formerly Amway. I don't want that. I don't want that.
I thought about that as a reason to why I would be okay with playing the Magic. That
exactly, and
every game is a home game. You know,
it should be. And don't get me wrong, I've been at the games at Kia this year, and it's been fun when there's a lot of Knicks fans in the arena, and you're doing things that don't give them much to cheer about. That's exciting. But when it's not going your way, and I experienced it last season, it's not fun, and nobody likes to hear chants in their arena. And that's just what it is. Florida being the snowbird state that everybody is moving here state, it just comes with the territory. So
there's a lot of New Yorkers in Florida? Really? I'm 100% kidding. I literally went down to Florida last week to visit. I visited 2 friends and almost went to visit a cousin that lives down there.
There you go. So, yeah, everybody's down there. So down here. So yeah, the Knicks for that reason are top of my list. And any team with bigs that can clog the paint in any respect, with the Cavs as well. But kind of the reason that if you look at the top of the standings right now, the Bucks are the team that I would want on the flip side.
Really?
Because and obviously the dream matchup for everybody that can score in the paint is the Pacers, but I don't know if a 4-5 is really likely at that point with them. But it is a close race, so who knows? But Bucks are kind of middle of the pack when it comes to opposing points in the paint, and things like that. So I think that they just are to the point where the Magic match up with them best when it comes to that. And let's be honest, you got Doc Rivers on the other side of the ball. If you get down, I'll never really feel super uncomfortable.
I've been pushing that narrative in our Knicks Film School group chat, and there's a belief in Milwaukee and specifically their lineup data that I respect and I understand. And Doc has had a lot of good teams just flat out fail in the playoffs, and he's been at the helm for like a lot of I've won 3 games in the series before the other team did, and never won a 4th before the other team did. And that's just unfortunately part of his reputation at this point. I don't know if it's like solely on him, but like once or twice is an anomaly. 7 or 8 is a bit of a trend. So I don't know. I think there's something to. I'm curious how you feel about this, and I've been on this all season about how the Magic remind me of that Knicks team that where Randall won Most Improved Player, right? And the Knicks were the 4 seed, and like leaving that year with a first round playoff loss stunk, but it was like I was just happy to be in the playoffs, like to host a playoff series. And like I'm curious if like even having this conversation about who you're afraid to play in the playoffs is a step further than you even expected to be. So like, is there amongst the fan base, do you sense a feeling of content? Like this is such a young team that's a host a playoff series in Paolo's 3rd year is already like, you know what, we accomplished something this year.
This will help answer the question. Until a week ago, I wasn't even comfortable talking about who I want in the playoffs because the race is so tight.
Right.
And I just know, I am scarred by injuries. And I'm like, at any moment, someone goes down and there's still enough time that you choke this entire thing. And now that you're in the 4 spot, I feel comfortable starting to talk about matchups. And I really feel more comfortable with it now that the fact that betting odds are heavily favoring the Magic to make the postseason. I believe we're like minus 10,000 on Hard Rock, their betting app. I believe that was this morning. So just seeing that shift has been great where it's like, okay, I'm not delusional. This team really can make the playoffs and not just the play-in. So that's definitely the case there. Now, as far as the fan base, there's always people that are going to want more and they're going to find things to complain about. You're not going to find me complaining. The only thing you'll find me complaining about is off-season lack of moves or moves that are made this coming off season. I don't know that I'm going to complain at all because I know like you go into a playoff series like we already talked about, but I already kind of feel like I know how that playoff series is going to go. You're just going to be inexperienced, and you're going to probably get shot out of a game because you can't shoot.
It's the thing that I would go into a playoff series thinking, if the Knicks end up with the match, like say that's the 4-5, right? I think that I'd go in confident, especially if the Knicks are getting healthy, especially like you mentioned the MSG Disney of it all, that you could potentially have a ton of fans in their building for game 1 or 2 or game 3 or 4, whichever team has home court. Yeah, I think and this more goes to the personnel questions I have about this team. The questions I would have about the Magic are like, so like, I mean, you could tell me like is there a player that come playoff time that you're curious if they're still going to be in the playoff rotation based off of the way they played this year? So who would be that guy to the Knicks fans that aren't watching the Magic as much?
It's Markelle Fultz.
So I'm telling you, the comp to 3 years ago with the Knicks, Elfrid Payton started every game for the Knicks that year. And then by game 2 was benched in the second half and we never saw him again. So you think the Magic might pull the plug on Fultz in that series?
The writing's on the wall. They might pull the plug on Fultz before the end of the season. If I'm being honest. Okay. He's been coming back from injury. He doesn't take shots outside the paint. If he does, it's a miracle. And then it's doubly a miracle if it goes in. He's great below the rim. Like, he is awesome when it comes to being in the paint. But at the end of the day, he's a guard. He's not going to get there every time he wants to, even though he does it very well. But you lack the outside shooting threat. And in this era of the NBA, you need shooting, point blank, period. And I think that Anthony Black is a rookie that very well could get those minutes come playoff time, which excites me because he's young, he's hungry, he's, from what we understand, he's like the stereotypical young, hungry player that wants to get better. You know, he's the first guy in, he's the last guy out. And on top of that, his 3-point shooting has become a lot better over the season. And he's been really good about knowing his role. And I just think that there's a world where, and he's so long and athletic defensively. You saw it with Jalen Brunson, that first matchup. Anthony Black started and was on him and held his ground and did very well. Mm-hmm. So defensively, he gives you a lot. He can shoot better than a Markelle Fultz. I think Fultz is absolutely the player that can get played off the court and might be the only one. Cole Anthony maybe could get there if he's not shooting well. He's had a slump, but he seems to be getting right again. I'm hopeful that he continues on this trend where he is shooting better. Defensively is where he could get played off the court. But even still, to his credit, he's been a lot better defensively this year. He's been awesome in a lot of respects. So if I have to give another answer, it's Cole Anthony. But my first answer is definitely Fultz.
Yeah, I mean the data where bears that out. Look, honestly, just the eye test personally. When the last time the Knicks played the game we're talking about, that Friday night against the Magic, the day before the Knicks shook up their roster with the Anunoby trade, like Randall had an incredible game, but Brunson really struggled, and it's because he just struggles against teams that throw length at him, which is why I really just want to see what the Knicks look like with their full complement of players against anybody at this point, but specifically in this matchup against some Magic, which obviously we won't see on Friday night. The Knicks have options to enter into a dogfight with the Magic. And, you know, if the Magic are going to try to play first to 100, the Knicks could get there first while also keeping the Maverick under 100 points. Excuse me, the Magic under 100 points. So
are you... Real quick, are you worried when it comes postseason time about lack of continuity going into that with like just getting players back? So with the trade happening with OG and everything.
You know what's funny? I would have been if I didn't think Tibbs would just like, all right, Boyan and Burks, you're not playing this series. Like he would just go to a 7-minute rotation if it came to that. You know, that guys aren't meshing, guys aren't playing. If Burks and Boyan aren't the two guys they got for Quentin Grimes, if they're not, like, if they're playing the way they are now, where I think he'd give Boyan some run and be like, let's see if your shooting can make a difference. You want to talk about Markelle Fultz not being in the rotation. I'm curious if Alec Burks is in a Knicks rotation in the not too distant future, So
what did you feel about him? I'm sure your listeners already know, but I'm curious. What did you feel about that trade with Burks coming over versus now? Because I know some Knicks fans were like, that we welcome him back. And
I was one of those Knicks fans because what I remembered was the heat checks, and he over his last 20 games in Detroit, he was shooting 46% from three on 7 attempts. So like that's what I thought we were trading for, and he's just like, there's no creating for others. There's no team play with him. The defense has been abysmal. And if you're going to do that and just be like a liability on one end of the floor, you're then going to just have to shoot the lights out. And he's shooting 39% from the field at the moment. Now, it's a small sample size, and I'm curious when everybody's back and they have Anunoby that can kind of mask some of the things that he's bad at on defense. Like, I am willing to give it a shot when he's back, but between the rise of Deuce McBride and how well he's played, and look, it's a small sample size, but in 185 possessions with Alec Burks on the court and Jalen Brunson off, they're being outscored by 26 points per 100 possessions. So if you thought he could come here and be a backup to the point guard and just be Point Burks, that hasn't bared out yet. Again, I want to see with Anunoby. I want to see with Randall. I want to see when he gets to play more minutes with Josh Hart. Like Josh Hart isn't playing 50 minutes a game at the moment, but the Burks thing has not worked out so far. I'm not going to say it's to the point where I'd have to say I was wrong in my evaluation. Not like I thought this could happen. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. I thought maybe it wouldn't be as good as we all in the moment thought it could be, but it's been rough so far. Bogey, I think, has been better than a lot of us give him credit for. I think he's been kind of what we expected, but I also know that they brought him here to be better, which, we would have liked him to help bridge the gap a little more than 7 and 9, but I know they don't win the Cavs game without him on Sunday when Jalen Brunson got hurt. They don't win the first game out of the break against Philly without him. Those are two very necessary wins, especially going into a matchup where we're a half game behind the Magic, So that's really the big Knicks questions is like the continuity being a concern. I think Tibbs has at least 7 to 8 guys that he's already confident in. And if these Detroit guys can help in any way, he'll add them to the rotation.
Yeah, I'm interested with Burks. And I was just kind of looking at, even with his playoffs with you guys, obviously only 5 games, but
that game one, that's the thing. You might get an Alec Burks game where you get 26 off the bench.
Right. Yeah. So you don't know. And that's what I have found is that you just stick with guys that to be shooters, and they'll come around. He's finding his footing. I genuinely think, he's a 38.5% 3-point shooter for his career. Yeah. So, and he's been in the league for like a while. Like he'll be fine.
There's a hint of regression to the mean that I think some Knicks fans are like, let's give this more time. Like, shout out CP of Knicks Fan TV that has entrenched himself as the leader of the Burks Hive. And my man, the hill that you're unfortunately having to climb each day to plant your flag there. I empathize there. I don't know if I sympathize with you anymore because I'm at the point where 11 minutes is too many. But look, these are the questions. This is why the Knicks made the move. It's a regular season problem right now. Can it be one that's solved by the playoffs? When you get everybody back and you get like 2 to 3 weeks of seeing how everybody plays together. That's why Tom Thibodeau also makes the big bucks. Like, you decide, because I'm going to react to it. I'm not going to get to make these decisions, Yeah. As far as Mosley having his first, just you tell me, like, what is your evaluation of him going into his potential first postseason? Like, that's the other thing I think I give the Knicks the edge for. I think Mosley's a good coach, but I think the Knicks would have the coaching edge just solely based on experience going into a 7-game series.
Yeah, that's what we continued to, while still criticizing and critiquing Mosley for his timeout usage last year or lack thereof. Beginning of this year, he has gotten a lot better, to his credit, and it shouldn't come as a surprise. He's a brand new head coach. Was an assistant for a while, a long time, got to see it done, and now he's growing with this team. So I don't expect him to be perfect, but I do think that he is just much better, as you would expect with the rotations that he's running. I think that he just is, maturing in his position as well, and learning the ins and outs. I mean, there's not a whole lot for me to say besides the fact that that's fair, besides the fact that he's growing. There's growing pains as there is with everything else. And nothing can be like, there is not enough words to express for how good he has been at keeping this team together. Last year, you start the year 5-20. If you start the year 5-20 and then you go on for a 45 win pace the rest of the year, I want you to show me the head coach and I'll say that's the guy I want. When you're 5-20 and your team's down, it is a miracle that these young guys who have been the man their entire basketball careers aren't just like at each other's necks after starting 5-20. I credit that all to Jamahl Mosley and getting these guys to buy in. That, hey guys, that it's right around the corner. It's right around the corner. And he talks about it all the time. The growth, the development of this team. It's been nothing short of incredible to watch, because this is what, the 4th, 5th youngest team in the league. And you've got 2 young 6'10" guys that can handle the ball like a guard and can play make. You got a lot going. And so it really is credit to Jamahl Mosley for managing all the personalities. That is where he has been felt the most. But he has been just come leaps and bounds in totality. I don't expect him to outcoach Tom Thibodeau, but I do expect him to hold his ground to an extent.
I think it's tough to really find much fault with him this season because of, again, when you outperform expectations the way that I think the Magic have this year, any criticism of Mosley is going to sound somewhat silly. Some of it's warranted, like the Elfrid Payton thing I just told you about. I was criticizing Tibbs about it that year too, and I was like, he's also probably going to win Coach of the Year. Like what the Knicks were supposed to be was a 20-win team, and he's about to make the playoffs with like Reggie Bullock and Elfrid Payton and Nerlens Noel, and all these guys that the Knicks got made fun of for signing a year ago. I think, like, 2 questions before I let you go. The fascinating thing about the season for the Magic is like, who's responsible for it? Like, do you say the defense? Do you say the coaching? I know we had our Paolo conversations in the past, and there's a Paolo versus Franz thing, at least on our side of it. I know that there's a national perception of the Magic, and then I see the 6 Man Show quote somebody with a national perception that turns into some ratioing being done. Shout out Big Waz over at the Ringer. So look, we've talked about this privately, what Paolo is and what he, like, is it too soon, the coronation that's happened? I think he's been good based on what they've asked him to do, which is a lot, like be the entire offense of the second unit next to Franz. I think Franz has been a little bit better, but I also know that that's my perspective. And then I talked to someone in Orlando and it's like, no, like he's the best player on the 4th seed in the East. And like, what are you doing, person that doesn't watch every possession of the Magic? But like, so help me here, like make sense of the fact that like Franz, and I think I have an answer, but I'm curious what yours is. But like Franz is +9 on the year in his possessions and Paolo is -8. Now, Paolo's playing like no minutes with the second unit, which is how the Magic have been building their leads. And Franz is part of the second unit, which is, again, is how they're building their leads. But like, is that like not supposed to be an indictment, or is this just more contextual that you have to look at all the factors as to what makes those plus and minus lineups?
As you mentioned at the top, we were in Charlotte the other night. It is one thing to watch the games on TV and even just be at the games in general, like we are in Orlando. But we were close in Charlotte the other night, the closest that any of us have ever been to, on the floor. And in watching it, we all were just saying like, it is ridiculous how much attention Paolo draws. Comparatively to anybody, to Franz, to whoever, right? And for me, all I really needed to see is things like that, the all-star voting. Like there's a reason that coaches are putting their vote out there for a guy like Paolo Banchero. They have to game plan for him every time they play. And I know that they've got to figure out, okay, how do we game plan and who are we going to take away? But at the end of the night, we all know the who they settle on game planning specifically for is Paolo Banchero. As you said, he doesn't. That's where you obviously all the advanced stats and lineup data does definitely need context.
Yeah,
like it has to happen, because the other thing with Franz and just something that you see from watching the games is how much more assertive Paolo Banchero is every night. Franz Wagner is assertive some nights, but sometimes he's a little bit passive. And I think what I've really started to think about, and obviously guys like Jokic and Luka, like they've figured it out. They've become the number ones, and Franz is still figuring things out. I mean, he's so freaking young, but I do think the international style of play is so much more team oriented that if you want one of Paolo and Franz to just fit in immediately with another roster, it's Franz Wagner. He's going to just fill in the gaps. He's essentially what we said he was going to be on steroids when he came into when the Magic drafted him, which is he's going to do everything well. He's going to complement anybody and everybody. And he's just, at that point, you thought he was just going to be a really, really good role player. But now there's questions about Franz because it's like he might be more than a really, really good role player. He might be an all-star one day. That might happen if the Magic just continue to climb and he remains the number 2 in Orlando. So there's a lot of great things to be said about both of them. Thankfully, there's not really a divide. Like something that we try to do is remind everybody, like, these dudes are on the same team. You don't need to pit them against each other. You can speak in facts and whatever, but at the end of the day, everybody pretty much understands Paolo's the 1. And you could say 1A and Franz is 1B. But yeah, Paolo is definitely the guy. But Franz Wagner's not bad for second option right now for a team this young. And he's just super good, man. And he's able to complement everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the second unit really is the thing that I think contributes to the lineup discrepancy being what it is. So just looking at cleaning the glass, Paolo Banchero just on the floor at any point. I said that he overall is like a -8, but when you just put him on in the lineup data, it's even. It's -0.2, which is not like a big discrepancy, right? Which means he's with the starting 5 and has to just play even. You put him off and put Franz on, which means you're putting Franz with the second unit, and it's like plus 7. And then the big one that I looked at is Paolo on, just looking at what his data is, like Paolo on, Franz off. So put him with the second unit. With Franz off, he's a -4.8. But then there's these 2 lineups that I go to. And I hope I didn't lose anybody there. But the key, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the key guys with the second unit are Gary Harris, Cole Anthony, Joe Ingles, and Goga Bitadze, right? Or Jonathan Isaac.
Yeah,
or Jonathan Isaac started these days.
Or Mo Wagner.
Or Mo Wagner, right. So it's those kind of lineups, everywhere,
but yeah.
There's these 2 lineups. One's 81 possessions of Banchero with the starters, but Suggs is the point guard instead of Anthony, and they're +40. Then you take out Suggs for Cole Anthony, and it's +27. Like, it's really the fact that Franz gets to play his second unit minutes with a much better collective offensive and defensive unit, which, again, Knicks fans are going to hear this, and this is the drinking game of today that I bring up the we hear season. Like, Julius Randle was asked to just keep things afloat with RJ and Reggie Bullock and Elfrid Payton and Mitch in the starting 5, just play even. Then Derrick Rose and Emmanuel Quickley and our old friend Alec Burks and Obi Toppin and either Taj or Nerlens Noel would come in, and we just build leads to double figures. And it seems like that would be my fear, is that the Knicks second unit hasn't been as strong. And, you know, the Magic unit, second unit, seems to be their strength. And Paolo, and this is where I empathize with the 21-year-old in year 3 having to do this. has like the highest minute total of guys with like a 30 usage this year, but the lowest points per possession. So like it's high usage, low efficiency, but it's like, when I say high usage, I mean like so high usage. Like he has more possessions than Luka this year. And yet like that's going to wear on a 21-year-old that doesn't have adequate spacing. So I am curious to see what happens as he gets older and as the Magic put better offensive players around him. And of course, like I'm curious to see what the playoffs look like, to see what his first trip to the postseason looks like, as well as Franz for that matter, you know?
Yeah, and you talk about not to circle back to Big Waz, but he very disrespectfully dismissed the duo of Paolo and Franz. But kind of and what I'm thinking when I think about Paolo and Franz and how young they are, they have answered the bell to everything you could have thrown at them to this point. You have a great end of last year. You're the 4th seed in the freaking East. Like you've had injuries aside from the teams around him, you're still playing other teams every night, and you're still got to beat the teams that you should beat. And this team has been able to do it. They've just answered the bell, and Magic fans couldn't be prouder of those two. And moving forward, you know, there's going to be cap stuff that comes up with the apron and everything like that. Jonathan and I have talked about on the show, but you know, you're going to run into some interesting contract situations. Do you bring in another guy? Do you have enough money to bring in another guy and pay Paolo and Franz? And there's going to be a lot of discussion there, I'm sure. But as of now, as it stands here on March 7th of 24, Paolo and Franz is our duo, and they're crushing it at every level right now. So
yeah. And you're happy with it too. Like it's similar to like when RJ and Randall was our duo. We're like, you know what? And we got this young nucleus with the kids and Quickly and Toppin and this Quentin Grimes guy that we drafted, which is why look, any Magic fans that are watching this, you know, I hope you don't hate me too much, but I will say, like, enjoy right now, because one day you're going to wake up on a random December morning and all these kids that you grew an attachment to got traded to Canada. So, you know, it's just all going to be over.
Consolidation is coming. It's coming.
And when it happens, it's going to hurt. Yeah,
it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt. But, I'm happy with I was overall in favor of the Anunoby trade. I'd kind of soured on RJ at that point. I was really going to miss Quickly, but I knew what Anunoby could bring. It's a different context. It's a different team now that the Knicks have. And it's why I'm curious, you know, what this season eventually becomes. And it kind of, a lot's going to depend on what they do on Friday night against the Magic at the Garden. So we'll see what happens. Last question before I let you get out of here. So I mentioned one award and one award only. I'm mixing up my last question to people, right? So realistically, there may be an award that a Magic player is in contention for, maybe a coach. If you had a genie, right, and was like, all right, I will make sure that you get one awards wish for this year. What is it? Is it Paolo making all NBA? Is it Suggs making all defense? Is it Mosley winning coach of the year or finishing top 3? Like, what's your one award wish?
Jamahl Mosley wins coach of the year.
Coach of the year. Okay.
Because that just encapsulates your whole team. It's an individual award that's really not. It's a team award. It means your team finished better than they expected. It means you excelled. I don't know that he'll win it, but if I could, that's the award I'm giving away, because I just want that dude to know that he's doing an incredible job. So if you can get him coach of the year, then that'll let him know. So yeah, for me, it's coach of the year. I would love a lot of those things to happen. And listen, there's narrative to be had about maybe all of them, but surefire, I would love for Jamahl Mosley to do that. I think he deserves it. You have a 12 win increase from the year before. You went from 22 to 34, and genuinely 46 wins isn't out of the question. If you have another 12 win jump, he more than should be in consideration and has an argument to win.
So they have to go to 37 and 26 now. So those are 19 games left. right?
I believe so, yeah.
So 19 games left. So they'd have to go 15
to win 40,
13 and 6 to win 50.
Yeah, to win 50, they got to win 13 more games.
I think if they win 50 games, see the tough part is I have no idea what to do with like, what if the Timberwolves win 60 games? What if the Oklahoma City Thunder win 55? What if the Celtics win 65 games? Like how much that's going to matter to the voting? I think just based on preseason expectations, the biggest jump for me would be a team I thought would be in the play-in being the 4 seed. So like hosting a playoff series. So, I'm curious to see where he ends up going into this matchup. Are you confident on Friday night?
It depends. Jalen Brunson, he's still questionable. Is that right?
Yeah, I think he plays though.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that's what Vegas thinks. Opening lines are like Knicks were -1.5. So tells me they all believe Brunson's a go. The fact
that he didn't play Tuesday, I thought also was like, we want to make sure he's there on Friday. Like, well, we're punting this game on Tuesday because he was legitimately hurt, but let's make sure he's a week off before he plays the Magic on Friday.
Yeah, I think it's tough to obviously you go to the Garden. Listen, the Magic beat Boston at home early in the year, and then we had a mini series in Boston and just got curb stomped for a whole weekend. So I know playing in places like that against a team like Boston, and then going to and playing at MSG with a team that's going to be just juiced up to have Jalen Brunson back, it's a tough spot to be in. And if Jalen Brunson has missed it, it's going to be a really tough spot to be in. So I am cautiously optimistic about the game, but I also understand, regardless of context, beating a team 4 times in a year, especially a team that from top to bottom is just a better roster than yours. It's tough. It's going to be tough. And this team is, you're on a 5-game win streak right now. You're the hottest team in the NBA. You got to fall back down to earth at some point. I will say, if you beat the Knicks, you beat the Pacers on Sunday, both huge games for playoff implications. You have a great chance at a double-digit win streak. But you got to beat the Knicks and MSG first. And I hope you do that, but we'll see.
Can I just read it for everybody? So they've won 5 straight, the Magic. Yeah. They beat the Knicks on Friday, then they're home for Indiana. You get to those, you're at 7 straight. Then it's Brooklyn, Toronto twice, and Charlotte. Yeah, double-digit win streaks in play. I agree.
It's in play. It's in play. Just you got to beat the old Knickerbockers there in MSG and take care of business. So we'll see, man. We'll see. I'm like I said, cautiously optimistic, but won't be shocked if the Magic lose, especially if Brunson is active.
What is this homestand? Okay, so they play the Knicks on Friday, then 10 of their next 11 are at home.
Yeah, you played a lot of road games to start the year.
Okay, I'm just gonna. Okay, here's my bold prediction for the end of our show, Luke.
Yeah,
I think the Magic going to be the 4 seed.
Okay.
I think the Knicks might win on Friday. I think the Magic are going to be the 4 seed. I think the Knicks are going to be stuck playing these West Coast teams the back half of March, right? And just the Magic are going to be home. They're just like not going to change their zip code. It's going to be what the Knicks were in January when they played 14 straight games, 12 of 14 at home, and the 2 road games were Charlotte, which is another like Southern MSG, and Brooklyn, which they didn't leave the tri-state area, right? Those were their 2 road games for 14. I think the Magic are now in that portion of their schedule which I'm not even like criticizing, like it's very much opened up for you guys to make a run. I think the Magic are going to be the 4 seed. That's my bold prediction.
It's it's bold if you don't look at the schedule.
If you look at the schedule, it's like it's probably likely.
Just look at the schedule. You've got 2 like mini tough stretches where you've got Sacramento, Golden State, who's figured out that they can play basketball again, LA and the Clippers, and then you skip down to the very end, Milwaukee, Philly, Milwaukee. That's it, and all the teams around it are pretty much cupcakes, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
but they're not world beaters. So I think the Magic have a great chance of the 4 spot. I'm not expecting it,
I know you can't predict it. I'm gonna, as an unbiased observer, I'm gonna predict it.
I appreciate it. It means more coming from you than it does me. So I do appreciate it.
Well, don't get me started on like if it's a 4-5, I may predict that it's the peak is the 4 seed, and then the Knicks come in and host every game potentially.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was
no. You're right.
It's real,
right.
but
it's the reality. It's the reality, and wouldn't be shocked by that or a first round exit as a result. But for now, as you said, we are taking your advice, enjoying it right now.
Enjoy it,
because while the expectations are low and nobody expects anything, because next year it'll be different. If you do end as a 4 seed, regardless of injury situations around you, everything is going to be escalated next year. The urgency is going to be up, and it's not going to be such a flying high. Oh, we're the 4th spot with a couple weeks left or a few weeks left in the season, and we can get bounced in the first round, still feel good about ourselves. It won't be that way at all. So we know that, and that's why this season might be one of the sweetest for the next few years.
There you go. Well, I wish you luck in every game except Friday night. And I always I've said this for the last year. I love the work that you guys do over at the 6-Man Show. I'm so glad you guys got to be in the building for Shaq's number retirement. I know it was a loss, but I know how much that specific thing finally happening, like the Magic retiring a number, how important that was. So I wish you and Kev and John, of course, all the best. Before you get out of here, please let the fine folks at home know where they can find you personally and all of your stuff.
Yeah. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, my Twitter is up there, my X at Luke Sylvia 96, at 6-Man Show on all social platforms. You can't follow me on Instagram because I'm private. I got children I don't need to see in. But you can go to the at 6-Man Show. You'll see plenty of me there. Appreciate it. And then before you let me go, Andrew, we talk about it all the time in our group chat. I've said it on Twitter, but genuinely, if you guys are still listening to this, please understand how blessed you guys are to have Knicks Film School, man, because they do everything well. We talk about it all the time. Andrew is one of our favorites, if not the favorite opposing team host, producer to interact with. Just does a great job, thorough. Nobody else is diving into our lineup data from opposing teams besides Andrew, Claudio, and the guys over at Knicks Film School. So really appreciate you guys, and keep crushing it.
Thank you, Luke. Sincerely, thank you. And obviously the respect is mutual. But again, I hope you lose by 100 on
That's
Friday
fine.
night.
Yeah, likewise.
There you go. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dig the show, head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. If you're watching, please like the video. Remember to subscribe. As far as I'm concerned, I will have a pregame pod on Sunday morning previewing the matchup against the Sixers. Some programming notes. Benji will be hosting the postgame on Sunday. And I should say John will, of course, be on Friday night when the Knicks play the Magic. But Benji will be hosting the postgame because we will be at Madison Square Garden for our annual KFS at MSG game on Sunday nights against the Sixers. So if you want to come say what's up to us, I think we'll have a meetup spot, but more specifically, be on the lookout for some KFS logos around the arena on Sunday night. Until next time, folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I will speak with you soon. Peace.